today. So let's start this great event that we have scheduled for today. So can we have a huge round of applause, not just for the summit, but you all who have made it on time today for this event. So can we have a huge round of applause? All right, so let's start the Dun & Bradstreet's Healthcare and Pharma Summit 2023. My name is Kaustav Bhattacharya, and I will be your host for today. So let me begin by sharing Dun & Bradstreet's commitment to this sector. We at Dun & Bradstreet have a long history of working with healthcare and pharma companies, both large and small. We enable you to make data-driven decisions by empowering you with a variety of data and analytics-driven products and solutions. Our finance solution offering, which includes the credibility reports, help to improve a company's visibility and credibility at a global level. To relate this with Indian pharmaceutical companies, DNB has actually received approximately 90,000 checks from global companies for Indian pharmaceutical companies in 2022. These checks are generally from buyers, other businesses, joint venture partners, and various other stakeholders in order to help them ascertain the credibility of an entity. And now you must be wondering why Hyderabad was our choice for this. Now, Hyderabad was our first choice to hold this inaugural flagship conference because of multiple reasons. Needless to say, it is the vaccine hub of India, accounting for over 1/3 of global vaccine production. It ranks first in the manufacturing of bulk drugs and third in formulations in the country, accounting to 40% of the total Indian bulk drug production and 50% of the bulk drug exports, thereby getting the name of the bulk drug capital of India. And finally, it is, again, like home to 20+ life sciences and med tech incubators, which is the highest in any city that in India. So that's why this was obviously the perfect choice for us. So today in this summit, we'll have a lot of insightful panel discussions and leadership talks around contemporary topics of technology, analytics, ESG, and supply chain resiliency for the Indian healthcare and pharma sector. In addition, DNB will also launch the first ever edition of its publication, India's Leading Healthcare and Pharma Companies 2023. The central theme of today's summit, can anyone tell me what the central theme is? You must all have read the agenda. Do we know what the theme of the summit is? Anyone? Yes, that's correct. It's prescription for future growth. And also, ladies and gentlemen, I feel very privileged to be a part of this inspiring and breathtaking summit today. I want to extend our heartfelt gratitude to our summit partners. So can we have you put your hands together for our digital transformation partner, Iron Mountain India Private Limited. Our co-partner, Maroon Oak Technologies Private Limited. Our next co-partner, Cloud4C Services Private Limited. Then we have our co-partner, Entity India Private Limited. And finally, our co-partner, Fortinet. So before we move forward, I'll remind you again that you can share your thoughts on your social media handles and do use the hashtag DNBHealthPharma. So, are we ready to get started? Can I have some energy from the room? Yes? Awesome. So for the first session of the day, we have Dr. Arun Singh, who's the Global Chief Economist of Dun & Bradstreet, who will share an overview of the Indian healthcare and pharma sector. Can we have Dr. Arun Singh on stage?
Thank you, Kaustav. Good morning. Come on, this is just the morning. Good morning. That's much better. And why I'm saying that we need to maintain the energy throughout the day, it's a long day for us. And I think this much needed discussion, especially after the pandemic. We might have ignored the healthcare last before the pandemic, but I think pandemic taught that we can't. We have to get back to healthcare because that's a prime, that's a key. And I know my name suggests that Dr. Arun Singh, so that's one clarification. So it's a PhD doctor, not a medical doctor. I don't have to do anything with that. So if anyone has a fever, please help yourself. I cannot recommend it. Crosinos or anything. So sorry for that, if that's the expectation. So good morning. I think we set a very long day of multiple discussion point. I think from this we are going to have good insights. And certainly as a central theme, Costa was talking about prescription for the growth. Everyone need a growth, whether it's personal life, professional life, and of course the sector talking about, and economy talking about. And this sector is certainly going to help India's aim to become a what you call 5 trillion economy, and certainly have the sustainable growth what we're talking about last few years. And pandemic has taught that we have a good potential. Some of the data points which I'm going to show certainly indicate that I think we need to leverage on the early signal or early signs we have basically shown. Now moving on, some of the data point which basically most of you already aware, talked about India is number one in the globally vaccine production. Kaustubh just talked about, he steal my thunder of saying that. So that's nothing to be done. I think that's a great achievement for us as a country. Second, we are again number one globally for supply of generic medication. You all know that. I'm just putting a data to just synthesize. And the third, we are 10th globally in terms of the medical tourism index. You know who are before us? We have Canada, Singapore, Japan, Spain, UK. Those are the countries before us. That's opportunity we have. We have to be number one there as well, because we can't be number 10th where we have already first rank on the first two parameter. And the last, in terms of biotechnology market size, we are 12th. Again, we have a China and US before us. We have opportunity to become a number one. These are the slides we basically talked about. We have traveled some journey. We reached some, some stage. From here, we need to just fly. We need to basically, the last 2 point where we have a 10th and 12th, ideally we should target the number one in that as well. There's opportunity, we can do that. And in fact, government supporting that piece, and will ensure that we are there. Why I'm saying at DNB, and I think Kaustubh just touched base about how we are engaged with the pharmaceutical sector around the world. So this is the data. We basically have a pool of 30 million odd in India and more than 500 million entities in the globally. And what this entity does, they basically want to do the trade with the pharmaceutical companies in India. And if I have to basically index that value prior to the pandemic, that's in 2018, 100 inquiry came in from global counterpart. They just want to do the trade with the pharmaceutical companies, overall business in India. That was 100. Post pandemic, that's around 2022. That number of companies gone to 200. It's just the index value. It's almost doubled. It used to be 100, now it's double 200. But look at the pharmaceutical businesses. It's a 3 times. Which means the global company wants to do the trade either from the supplier side, from the customer side, from other prospect. It's a 3 times. It's 100 times more than what it used to be for the all businesses. Which means the growth of this sector is growing faster than the all of the businesses put together because of the increased interest coming from the global counterpart. They're basically coming to us and trying to understand what we does and how we can engage with the global, how we can engage with the Indian counterparts. That's opportunity we offer. But the slightly bad news, in fact, area of improvement, I would say that the out-of-pocket expenditure toward the healthcare, out of 100 rupees, 50 rupees I have to put from my side, from my pocket in India. But if I'm living in some of the countries in the Western Pacific, I'm not putting that much amount, hardly 20 bucks or something, 20 rupees or something I'm putting. So India is diagonally opposite when we talk about the out-of-pocket expenditure. We might have heard, but I'm just putting a data to synthesize that there are good amount of opportunities for Indians or for the India policy makers to ensure that that 50 benchmark, that 51 rupees we are spending, in fact 51% of total healthcare expenditure coming from my pocket should come down. Because if that's not happening, we are going to lose out those opportunities, because government schemes, government expenditure covering another 34%, and then rest of the things coming from the charitable institute, NGOs and other pieces. That's an area of opportunity for India to improve, because if that's not happening, we have a serious issue in terms of sustaining the growth what we have seen in the first two slides. As a result of that, because if I have to spend 50% of my healthcare expenditure from my own pocket, there are necessary precautions one has to basically take, what we call preventable mortality rates. Look at in India, it's highest per million people. It's around 639 people are dying, as against Brazil just 245. Sri Lanka, in fact, our neighbor, 352. We are more than that. Because 50 rupees, 50% I'm spending from my pocket, I might not spend money on the preventable disease or preventable issues. I'm happy getting into the disease mode, and this is the outcome. So that's the sad part. There is basically some takeaway from this. And another area of improvement, as a result of that, 17% of us, in fact, total income out of 100 rupees I earned in a year, I spend more than 10 rupees on my healthcare. Just left with the 90 rupees for the rest of the pieces, which is again huge. There are other countries, let's say South Africa, one can say that's a different comparison, but they are just 1%. In fact, Indonesia, Thailand, just 2%, which means they still have a 98% of their incomes spend with, remain with them, which they can spend on anything else, whereas we, 17% of the population is spending more than 10%. That's another area of improvement for us. But there is a hope, there is improvement when I talk about out-of-pocket expenditures. This basically is a 2x2 matrix, what we call at DNB. You can see the flat line, which talks about universal health coverage index. Lower is the worst, higher is the best. Then we have a vertical line which talks about out-of-pocket expenditure, percentage of total healthcare expenditure. Higher is worst, lower is good. Now, the best place to be in, the right bottom. But unfortunately today, there's only two countries with the right bottom. That's one is South Africa, and another one, of course, Brazil. China is trending towards that. But look at the India. In 2010, that was the worst quadrant to be in. We are still there because our universal health coverage is small, but our out-of-pocket expenditure was very high. But look at the improvement. We are second best after China. We've improved not just our out-of-expenditure decline, also our universal health coverage have gone up significantly. So we're trending towards right top quadrant, and certainly with the policymaker and all of you in the room working in a coordinated way, will ensure that India is part of the right bottom quadrant where we are aspiring to be. Now, when I looked at data across the world, there's a multi-dimensional piece I'm trying to represent. Again, we have a horizontal axis which talks about domestic general government health expenditure as a percentage of GDP, how much government spend in the healthcare. And then we have a vertical axis which talks about health access and quality index. Higher is a better. And the color of this dot is basically, we have a socio-demographic index. The green, very good in terms of education and social sector for that particular country. Amber, somewhere in the middle, and the red is the worst. If you look at India, not that bad. We are still in the middle. Why? Because our healthcare expenditure is exactly 2.1% of the GDP. Look at the right extreme of the country. The healthcare expenditure is as high as 10%, but the outcome is still 100. We can aim in intermediate times to spend somewhere 4% of the GDP by the government, and still part of the green, and still part of the what I call the healthcare and quality index, which means we need a coordinated effort from the government and all of you. Why I'm saying all of you? Because I think there is a case for that. We can improve, we can take that route, and the technology is helping. And technology is basically all there. When we talk about, let's take example of any emergency scenario, and the patient is basically transported from one hospital to the other, or from a home to hospital. You don't have a doctor in the ambulance. But there are scenarios when talk about the 5G technology, when talk about AR and VR, the real-time vital health statistics can be sent across to the doctor, and doctor can prescribe to whatever can be done to the paramedic officer in the ambulance. The doctor can basically manage the patient in the ambulance while not being in there physically. That's the power of technology basically we are looking at. We are talking about the AI technique where basically, offset the shortage of screening for the potential medicine, potential drugs from 1 month to just 1 day post-pandemic. We have seen that one, which means AI can help to bridge the gap of shortage of some of the specialists. For example, you don't need some of the specialists in the room when AI is there, which basically can help on that front. VR and AR can help from that side. Blockchain, for example, can help to secure data from one area to the other area. In summary, when I talk about your wearable collect vital data, AI analyzes that data. AR and VR help create new therapeutic modalities. Blockchain enables secure sharing of data, and genetics and genomics help create personalized therapies and personalized medicine. That's basically power of the technology, which will help not just reach out to the masses in order to improve the healthcare access and universal coverage, also help to bring down the cost of the cost of expenses from the pocket, from your own pocket. That's the technology. And towards end, all of us, basically there's a 4 area where we can basically intervene and can help. Government can help ourselves, can help everyone to improve. When I'm basically talking about the growth of the sector, is basically 4. Certainly infrastructure. If you look at infrastructure in India, when I talk about the hospital beds, per 1,000 people in India is hardly 0.5 vis-a-vis China 4.3. When I talk about physician per 1,000, 0.73 as against 2.23 in China. It's marked different. Now we are the #1 country in terms of the population. Can we afford to have that infrastructure? And that's the basic serious pieces. So there is infrastructure improvement required, and in terms of technology, all of us can basically support and will basically get into that space. The governance, that's the second piece. I think there's a need to have a e-health records. It basically save the cost. It save the transportation of the record from one area to the other, safe, secure, and is a real-time transportation of the data of any patient or anything. That's basically, whether you talk about the policies, talk about anything, we need serious intervention from the policy maker in that area. the quality of the services. Only 50% of us go to the government healthcare because of the quality of the services, which means 50% of us don't believe that once we get into the government, probably there could be serious things, we might not come back. So that's a serious issue there, which means there has to be quality improvement required from the government side, and collectively they can do that one. And the fourth, healthcare finance. Government spend just 2.1% of the GDP towards healthcare, where we talk about the social inclusion is very critical, very important, especially when I talk about highest population base on the planet. 2.1 has to go up. We can't afford to spend just 2% of the GDP ignoring that piece. It used to be 1.5% few years back, gone to 2%. Still, you've seen some of the data where the social element is very high. All the countries in the green, they're spending 10% of the GDP, which means we need serious intervention from the government. With that, I'll close my discussion, and I'm looking forward for 3-4 panel discussion we have scheduled, and I think insight from all of you. Thank you for listening.